How did super angry dad Frank Murphy go from this
Get the out of here!
to this?
Hey, Billy. How you doing, Philip?
You didn't tell me to go myself.
That's right, we're taking a trip back to 1973 as we cover the entire story of F is for Family from start to finish. And fair warning, this show is not for kids. Ah, the 1970s. The good old days. A time where you could smack your kid, smoke inside, and bring a gun to the airport. If you take legendary comic and all-around guy Bill Burr's word for it, that is. The spiritual origins of F is for Family begin in Burr's early stand-up comedy journey. When he was a young comic, he would tell stories about his slightly dangerous childhood in the 1970s suburbia to huge laughs. That is, until he got a little older. Audience members consisted of kids who had to wear helmets to ride their bikes growing up, and Burr's supposed to be funny anecdotes started to get awkward groans. He realized that if the stories were animated, it would be more palatable to the audience. On December 18, 2015, F is for Family premiered on Netflix, introducing us to a dysfunctional Irish-American family in the fictional town of Rutsville, Pennsylvania, the Murphys. First up, we've got Frank Murphy, voiced by Bill Burr. Frank is a hardworking, short-tempered, and brutally honest Korean War vet, as well as a husband and father to 3 kids. He is disillusioned by the American dream, and constantly feels emasculated by the changing social and cultural norms during the free-loving 1970s. The more things change, the more they stay the same, eh, Frank?
Okay, that's enough.
Frank is married to his wife, Sue, the mother to his children and an inspiring entrepreneur of plastic food storage containers. Sue dropped out of college during her senior year after she met a handsome soon-to-be pilot named Frank Murphy and got knocked up. Whoops. Despite the shotgun wedding of it all, the two do love each other and their family, for better and for worse. Up next is the kid that crushed both his parents' dreams by just existing, 14-year-old Kevin Murphy. Kevin is a delinquent who dabbles in drugs with his friends and regularly annoys his dad with how dumb he is. He doesn't get the best grades in the world, but what else can you expect from a teenage aspiring musician?
I'm an artist, and I need room to blossom!
Next in line is Bill Murphy, an 11-year-old wisecracking redhead loosely based on Bill Burr himself. Bill gets bullied quite a bit by other kids and his father, but he's probably the most normal member of the family. Lastly, we've got Maureen Murphy, a whip-smart 9-year-old whom Frank always refers to as his princess. To the chagrin of her older brothers, she's intelligent, inquisitive, and great with computers, baffling the male authority figures around her.
Obviously, Maureen cheated, or she can never have children.
Despite being so smart, she has a knack for getting herself into trouble.
Daddy's home.
Frank gets home from a 12-hour shift at work, greeted by his loving wife and kids. Before things can get too pleasant, Frank gets into a screaming match over the phone with a Bible salesman. He hangs up the phone. Literally, kids, they hung up the phone on the wall before going to the garage to rage out at a punching bag and a little kid that lives across the street. The family sits down to watch action hero Colt Luger on their black and white TV.
Sometimes a man's gotta do what a man does.
During the commercial break, Frank decides to throw a neighborhood party for a big televised fight coming up. He invites a few buddies over, but they've already made plans with Frank's next-door neighbor Vic, a wealthy DJ and super chill drug addict, with a color TV. Fancy. Not willing to be outdone, Frank lies and says he has a newer, bigger color TV. And now, the whole neighborhood is coming over to see it. Frank and Sue pick out a TV for $639, which is over $4,000 US in 2025 money. Understandably, they forbid the kids from even touching it. But Bill gets curious while his dad is sleeping and accidentally breaks the TV with a giant magnet he has from a school project. Luckily for Bill, his father blames the store. Unluckily for Frank, the store refuses a return. Bill eventually fesses up and his parents take him back to the store to apologize to the clerk, who is a huge jerk and kicks the poor kid out of the store. Before he leaves, Bill catches a glimpse of Colt Luger, who inspires him to, destroy the rest of the TVs in the store with the magnet. Somehow this works in the Murphys' favor and they're given a better model free of charge, and the clerk had to apologize.
Frank Murphy's not a loser! Frank Murphy's a winner! Watch it!
You tell him, Frank. The party goes off without a hitch, and Bill gets to watch the fight with the rest of the men. That night, Frank gets an exciting, life-changing phone call. His boss died in a horrific accident, meaning Frank is getting a promotion.
I think our luck is finally turning around.
Jesus, Frank, a man is dead.
But he was kind of a dick.
I didn't say it was a happy phone call, I said life-changing. Kevin gets in huge trouble with his parents because he's failing all of his classes. To show his son the value of hard work, Frank decides to bring him to his job at the airport, where he was recently promoted from baggage handler to middle management. Perks of rear boss being decapitated in a freak accident. He gets called into a meeting with the literally big boss, Bob Pogo, who wants Frank to prevent a strike among the employees. Pogo offers Frank corporate football tickets as a bribe. Incentivize to crack down on the workers.
That's what's wrong with this country!
Meanwhile, Kevin has wandered off to hang out with a couple of slacker baggage handlers who steal some random pills from passenger luggage. Stay in school, kids. Frank continues about his workday before being stopped by his hardworking coworker, Rosie. Rosie wants Frank's assurance that he'll take the union's side over management. For those keeping score at home, it looks like Frank has promised both management and the workers that he has their back. I'm sure that'll turn out fine. Kevin and his new friends are watching old security footage, specifically the footage from Frank's old boss getting violently decapitated. Kevin is traumatized.
Alive?
Dead. Alive. Dead.
Who said work can't be fun? Kevin runs off to find his dad, who's being berated by an old woman whose medication was lost in transit.
They were in that bag. They're for my uterine lining.
And that, kids, is why we don't ingest random pills. Kevin pieces together what happened and saves the day by swiping the pills back from his friends and returning them to the old lady. And then he tells the woman to shut up for being rude to his dad. Frank thinks the outburst was absolutely hilarious and offers Kevin one of the tickets to the big game. At the top of the episode, Frank uninvites Kevin from having bad grades, so now he's going with Bill to the city to see the football game.
Just you and me, buddy. This will be a day you will remember forever.
How right you are, Frank. How right you are. Frank and Bill are seated next to Roger Dunbarton, the CEO of Mohican Airways. Frank spends a lot of time kissing butt and not very much time enjoying the game with his kid. Dunbarton further pressures Frank to prevent a strike among the employees.
You have been anointed, Frank. Don't let me or God down.
Bill has to go to the bathroom, but Frank is too busy being schmoozed. Bill makes it to the men's room, alone. It is the most disgusting, disturbing thing he has ever seen. I can practically smell it through the screen. Surrounded by all manner of bodily fluids, Bill tries to use the urinal, but is too traumatized to follow through. Bladder full, he returns to his seat, where his dad is having a great time. On the way home, Frank runs out of gas, which sucks, because I don't think Bill has peed yet. Luckily, Frank's coworker Rosie is outside a nearby pub and offers to help. Rosie sends a friend to get them gas, and Bill decides not to risk the men's room again, which is totally fair. Rosie and Frank chat about work politics, leading to Bill spilling the beans about the free corporate tickets. Rosie isn't too happy about this and thinks that Frank is being two-faced. He gives Frank the gas and sends them on their way. Finally, we see Bill and Frank taking a whiz on the side of the road. Poor Bill, I'm relieved just watching this. In this episode, we learn a little bit more about Sue and her side job selling plasticware. Turns out she's great at it. So great, in fact, that she wins an answering machine. And there might be an opening at corporate for Sue to get promoted. Frank is super jealous of the robot answering machine, or rather, jealous of his wife's success as he struggles at work. Bob Pogo leaves a rude message on the new machine demanding Frank come into work immediately. Hooray! Now they have that message recorded for posterity.
What a lovely gift, Sue.
Hello?
Hooray for us.
You tell him to get here now.
At the airport, the baggage handlers have staged a slowdown. Rosie tells Frank that if there's no new contract by Christmas Eve, the workers will go on strike. Meanwhile, it's Halloween. Sue leaves Frank to watch the kids alone while she delivers her plasticware orders. Already annoyed after a few minutes of being around children, Frank picks up a call from Sue's boss, who offers her a part-time role.
She did mention that to me, and she decided to turn it down.
Damn, Frank, what the hell, my guy? Bill and his friend Philip get ready to go trick-or-treating, but they're stopped by their big kid bully, Jimmy Fitzsimmons. Jimmy tells them he better not see them in costume because Halloween is for babies. He also threatens to kill them a little bit. Ah, childhood. Sue hears a recording of Frank's conversation with her boss. Furious, she drives off without a word. Frank struggles at home with the kids before telling Maureen he'll take her trick-or-treating. Of course, he has no plans to do that. They drive off to find Sue. After stopping at a closed yarn store, Frank and Maureen find Sue at a batting cage. Frank offers a half-assed apology, which does not make it better.
Those are just words. They don't mean anything unless you back them up.
Sue tells Frank that she took the job and he needs to be okay with that. And how could he say no to a woman who swings a bat like that? This episode opens with a scene from Alfred P. Southwick Elementary School. In case you were wondering, that's the name of the dentist who invented the electric chair. Bill runs up to Jimmy and punches him in the face, leading to his suspension from school. Kevin, trying to be a good big brother, covers for Bill so he doesn't have to tell their dad. Maureen, on the other hand, blackmails him.
Give me $1.
Diabolical. Sue wants to try a new approach to parenting Kevin and offers him concert tickets for improving his history grade. The concert he wants to go to is sold out, but Frank says he'll see if his union buddies have connections. Unfortunately, negotiations between the union and the airline are not exactly going well. The union threatens to walk out on Christmas Day, which is just 4 days later. But even through the work drama, Frank wants to make good on his promise to Kevin. Swallowing his pride, Frank gets tickets from Vic, their cokehead neighbor, who works at the radio station. Bill has had a long, boring day of no school and does what any normal kid would do. He jumps on his parents' bed. He hears his mom drive up and scrambles under the bed to hide. Frank arrives shortly after, and he and Sue get into a huge fight. A huge, sexy fight. Still hiding under the bed, Bill sees a side of his parents no child should have to see. Wow, this poor kid. While his parents and Kevin are at the concert, Bill goes into the woods to re-challenge Jimmy to a fight, but instead, he accidentally blows up a container of fireworks, burning down his clubhouse and part of the forest. Whoops. After the fire, the family finds out that the family dog is missing, and there's a last-minute union meeting to prevent a strike before the holidays. And it's only a few hours until the Murphys' Christmas party. No pressure, Frank. To try to keep Bill out of trouble, his parents sign him up to be an altar boy at the church. Unfortunately for Bill, his bully Jimmy is also an altar boy. Jimmy tells Bill that he thinks his pyromania is pretty hardcore.
Took a lot of balls to go psycho like that. And I respect the
out of balls.
Hey, no swearing in church. The two steal money from the offering box, but Bill isn't willing to go much farther than that. He gets into a fight with Jimmy and runs out of the church. Just as a union deal is getting ratified, Brandy, Dunbarton's wife, asks if she can have a fancy pen too. Frank politely tells her they don't have any more, sending Dunbarton into a rage, sending the union on strike. Frank and Mr. Fitzsimmons get in a fight in the front yard. Sue wins the fight, hitting Mr. Fitzsimmons with a baseball bat. Told you she shouldn't be messed with. The Murphys' elderly Jewish neighbor finds the family dog. On TV, they see the airport workers on strike, and Frank rushes down to stop things from getting worse. After giving an impassioned speech on live television, Frank convinces Dunbarton to sign the deal, but because his boss is the worst, this leads to Frank getting fired immediately on Christmas. In an act of petty revenge, Frank traps Bob Pogo in his car by dropping his keys somewhere impossible for him to reach, right by his feet.
They're at your feet.
You fucker!
Merry Christmas, Bob.
And after that depressing holiday cliffhanger, we move right into season 2. We open in the year 1958 outside Sue's sorority house, where young and charming Frank waits for her. Back in 1974, Frank is not quite as chipper. It's his 3rd week of unemployment. One morning, the kids find out they have a snow day. Sue has the day off too and wants to spend the day sledding with the family. Immediately upon arrival, Frank has his masculinity challenged by Vic, whose life is going great, and Jimmy, who is terrified of Sue after she beat up his dad.
Don't let him bother you, Frank. He'll be in jail soon.
Wait to call it like you see it, Sue. Kevin is teased by his friends for being a virgin, so he goes to talk to Claire, who's made out with him before. They're about to go to her house when Jimmy chucks Bill down the sled hill, causing him to crash into Maureen and break the ice beneath his brother's feet. Kevin has a full-on panic attack, embarrassing himself in front of his crush and getting a nasty case of hypothermia, but he's a teenager, so he's probably more upset about the first part. While at the hospital, Frank rants at the front desk lady until he passes out.
Oh boy.
And that's why it's important to process your feelings. The kids are okay, but Maureen gets an eye patch. To salvage the day, Frank takes the family out to dinner. Everyone gets along and has a great time until Frank realizes he can't pay the bill. Sue slips him some money to avoid embarrassment. That night, Bob Pogo finally calls Frank to ask for a meeting. Frank prepares for his meeting with Pogo, feeling very optimistic. Sue confesses that she hates her job and wants to quit. But in the meantime, she has a customer complaint she needs to deal with. As Sue gets screamed at by the plasticware customer, she daydreams about being a housewife again, but for Hollywood actor James Garner. Sue storms out of the house, and the customer vows to get Sue fired. Frank meets with Bob Pogo, who's attempting to eat healthier. It's somehow more disgusting than before.
And I am on my way to a healthier me.
Bad news for Frank, though. He isn't getting his job back. He's been replaced by Dunbarton's severely brain-damaged nephew. The meeting was to ask Frank to come in and train him for free. Feeling defeated, Frank grabs a drink with Rosie, who gives him the business card of a buddy that runs a vending machine business. Oh, by the way, Rosie's real name is Chauncey.
Hey, Chauncey, baby.
Your real name is Chauncey?
You tell anybody that, I'll cut you deep.
Got it, Rosie it is. Overwhelmed with the bills and Frank's bad news, Sue gets in touch with Vivian to get a full-time position at Plasticware.
How fast can you type? I don't care. I can stare at that rack all day. You're hired.
Off to a great start, huh, Sue? Bill and Kevin have been fighting a lot more lately, and Kevin's hands always smell like butter. Frank theorizes that Kevin needs some, teenage privacy. Bill, meanwhile, gets a new job as a paperboy. He's trying to save up for a cool new hockey stick. Frank promised Sue that he'd file at the unemployment office, but gets embarrassed when he sees a fellow union worker and bolts out of the building. Kevin catches his dad having a breakdown at home, prompting Frank to say, "Wait a minute, aren't you supposed to be at school?" This causes Kevin to have a breakdown over his lack of privacy at home. Frank agrees to move him into the basement so he can have his own space. They have their equivalent of a heart-to-heart.
I don't hate you. Well, I hated my dad.
Stop it, guys. You're gonna make me cry. Sue is struggling with her misogynistic bosses at work, who regularly insult her and make comments about her appearance. They do the same thing to Vivian, Sue's boss, but she dishes it right back. Vivian tells Sue that this is just part of being a woman in the workplace. After a long day, Sue is upset that Kevin and Frank just threw the stuff from the basement outside. Kevin confesses that he ditched school, but Frank can't bring himself to tell the truth. Kevin writes a song about his dad's betrayal, and Frank calls Rosie's friend for a job. Kevin is hanging out with his friends at the record store when they catch Vic bribing a DJ with cocaine to get a bubblegum pop record on the air. Disillusioned, the three aspiring musicians decide to find their own cocaine to get their music on the radio. Frank, meanwhile, is getting ready for his first night shift at the vending machine company. Smokey, his new boss, comes to pick him up in a heavily graffitied truck. Smokey tells Frank he has one night to prove himself on the job and spouts off detailed instructions.
Shove your coin sack into the front of your pants. Sack to sack. Say it.
Sack to sack.
Very serious business. Nevertheless, they restock the condom machine to huge fanfare. It was a tough night, but Smokey offers Frank a full-time job in the end, boosting his confidence. Sue is having a nice evening with Bill and Maureen when inspiration strikes. She knows that Plasticware needs a new product, and while fixing the washing machine, she begins drawing pictures of a salad spinner prototype and is distracted the rest of the evening. Kevin is out with his buddies looking for cocaine. They don't find any, but they do find a very overweight prostitute. Terrified, they drive off.
Queers?
Aw, they just wanted illegal drugs. They drive to the radio station where Kevin chews out Vic for being a sellout. Vic and the DJ listen to the tape and very kindly put a small soundbite on the air. See, Kevin, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Kevin, riding a high from his radio jingle,
Rock 109.5.
Yes!
manages to get a gig booked with his band. But the gig is on a school night, and Frank forbids him from going due to his bad grades. Frank goes next door to yell at Vic for encouraging his son, confessing that he believes dreams can only disappoint. After all, he never got to become a pilot like he wanted. Kevin overhears this, and the two get in a huge fight. Later that night, Kevin sneaks out to make his gig. Frank finds him at the concert venue, which is actually just an old folks' home. The crowd reception is underwhelming, but Kevin manages to impress one girl, which is good enough for him. Frank, feeling sorry for his son, decides to let him stay out late that night. Bill has finally saved up enough money for the hockey stick until Jimmy steals some of it from him. He goes to the store to buy a cheaper stick, but the price has gone up.
That's inflation for you.
Welcome to being a grown-up, Bill. He tries to steal the stick, but gets caught by the owner, and then lies saying that his name is Jimmy Fitzsimmons, and then still steals a hockey stick. Later that night, Bill and his friend Philip see Jimmy getting hauled off to Catholic military school. Meanwhile, Sue pitches her idea for a salad tosser. Unfortunately, none of her male bosses quite get it. They must not make a lot of salads. Kevin has a big day planned. He's going to see Haircut Girl and plans to lose his virginity. To prepare and pass the time, he furiously for a total of 11 minutes. Long day ahead, bud. Frank has his own big day ahead, having to stock vending machines in an extra morning shift. One of his first assigned stops is at the airport, where he runs into his former boss, Bob Pogo. Pogo has a meltdown about work stress. Apparently, the Dumbartons are coming down on him hard. Frank tries to escape, but Pogo, still on his health kick, is enticed by the perks of Frank's new job and decides to tag along. Pogo wants Frank to come back to work, but he refuses. In a stressed out rage, Pogo eats a bunch of Frank's inventory. Meanwhile, at Sue's workplace, Vivian finds her salad tosser drawings and is super impressed. She tells Sue to come up with $150 to pay for a real prototype, which they'll present to the plasticware founder Henrietta Van Horn. Kevin shows up to Haircut Girl's house promptly at 2 o'clock to fool around. He, how do I put this, gets a little too overexcited, which Haircut Girl is actually really cool about until he accidentally smacks her in the face. She kicks him out, Kevin tries to go home, but he's locked out. Cutie Pie, Vic's girlfriend, offers to help, and she's interested in Kevin.
There it is again. Stupid thing won't go away.
They have sex on Vic's couch, which is wild. But probably isn't even the most illegal thing that's happened over there. Frank scrounges around for money to cover the cost of the inventory Pogo ate, and comes across Sue's secret money and cigarette stash. He swipes the money that Sue needed for her prototype. Desperate for cash, Sue pawns a locket Frank gave to her before they got married.
Enjoy your heroin.
Ouch. This episode opens with Kevin and Cutie Pie post-court. Cutie Pie freaks out when she realizes Kevin is 14 and kicks him out of the house. How old could the neighborhood kid possibly be, lady? Anyway, it's the morning of Frank and Sue's anniversary, and they get into a fight about the money he took. Then, Sue forgets their anniversary, so now she's the sorry one. They decide to go on a date that night, and Frank calls out of work, saying he needs to get his wife a gift. Smokey is very understanding and gets back to his job.
Well, back to work. 1, 2, 3, baby. 1, 2, 3, baby.
That is probably going to cause some surprises. Sue and Vivian head over to Henrietta Van Horn's mansion to pitch her salad tosser to the head of Plasticware. Unimpressed by the lackluster pitch, Henrietta insults Sue, saying she lacks passion. Sue unloads on her, ranting about everything she went to get the prototype made. That's enough to sell Henrietta on the idea, and the three believe it will be a huge success. Frank and Sue are getting ready for their date night when they are interrupted by a call from Maureen's school. She's been caught cheating. Well, they think she's been cheating, because no girl could possibly be that good at math. The meeting is quickly derailed when Frank and Sue get into yet another screaming match.
Stop it! Stop yelling! Okay, I cheated!
Okay, cheating mystery solved. Bill, meanwhile, is on a rebellious streak after successfully stealing that hockey stick and getting rid of Jimmy, straining his friendship with Philip. He's the only one in the family sleeping soundly that night. Little does he know that Jimmy Fitzsimmons just got out of military school. Frank tries to make up for the day before by bringing his wife breakfast in bed. Sue insists that the problems can't be solved with a single meal. She suggests a couple's retreat with Father Pat, which Frank immediately rejects. Sue suggests a psychiatrist instead. Cue another fight. While shouting, they decide to go to lunch together.
We'll have a lovely lunch. Good. And I'll buy you that f***ing pie you like.
Fun Saturday morning, eh, kids? Bill is hanging out with some neighborhood kids in the woods when he's approached by a clean-cut Jimmy Fitzsimmons, who is making the rounds to people he has wronged to apologize.
I humbly apologize for calling you the following names: ass butt,
This could take a while, let's move on. Frank attends a secret meeting with his former coworkers to try to get rid of the new manager and nephew of the CEO, Scoop Dunbarton. They exchange a bunch of terrible ideas before resolving to put him on a plane to the middle of nowhere. Frank meets Sue at the diner, but he's distracted and dismissive as he thinks he's getting his job back. He sees the word co-pilot on Sue's list of talking points, reminding him of a promise he made after Sue got pregnant with Kevin.
I'll support you all the way. I'll be your co-pilot.
Later that night, he agrees to go to the couple's retreat with Father Pat. Jimmy continues on his apology tour, eventually reaching Philip, who immediately cracks under pressure. Philip confesses that it's his and Bill's fault that Jimmy was sent to military school, and gets the crap kicked out of him. Frank and Sue attend a couple's retreat with Father Pat to help repair their marriage. It was recommended to them by Sue's friend Ginny and definitely not gay husband Greg. Frank is not enthusiastic about attending, as he doesn't think men should talk about their feelings. The 70s, am I right? Ginny and Greg, as the retreat's biggest success story, get to lead the meeting.
Oh, you've got a swimmer's body.
Maybe he just really respects the guys who stay in shape. After listening to the other couple's problems, Father Pat and Sue push Frank to talk about his feelings, but they might have pushed him a little too far. Frank blows up, admitting to everyone that he's jealous that Sue gets to pursue her dreams when he didn't get to pursue his, and was secretly hoping she would fail. The entire room is shocked, especially Sue. Greg takes this as an opportunity to admit he's gay and begs for a divorce.
I like.
What?
Ginny doesn't believe him. I'm sure this will all end up just fine. Bill, meanwhile, is still hiding from Jimmy. Seeing that Philip is doing the same, Bill takes Maureen's advice and apologizes to his former friend. Philip shows him a terrifying notebook of violent drawings.
This is how I get my feelings out when my ears get hot.
Who is this kid? Jeffrey Dahmer? Nonetheless, Bill thinks that they can devise a plan to get Jimmy to leave them alone. The plan goes horribly wrong, leading to Jimmy getting hit by a van. The other kids flee the scene and Bill takes him to the hospital. Kid's got a heart after all. Kevin, on the other hand, is feeling uneasy. Vic is throwing a big birthday party for Cutie Pie and wants Kevin and his band to play. Kevin wants to back out, but his friends convince him to play. After Vic's boss fires him at a birthday party, Kevin performs a 30-minute-long piano solo, in which he confesses that he had with Cutie Pie. Vic shoots up his own house in a coked-out rage.
I can quit anytime I want!
Whatever you say, my guy. Frank and Sue are still fighting, each with a big day of work ahead. Frank is on his way to the airport to attempt to get rid of Scoop Dunbarton. The group plans to incapacitate him and dump him on a plane to the middle of nowhere. Good luck, guys. Vic heads down to Kevin's basement to have a heart-to-heart. Vic assures Kevin that it isn't his fault, offering some sage wisdom.
Once your gets hard, the story never makes sense.
He also suggests that Kevin gets a penicillin shot, which is just good advice. Vic vows to get sober, and Kevin lets up a bit on the self-loathing. Bill bikes to Jimmy's house to apologize for, well, everything. Instead of beating him up, Jimmy thanks Bill for taking him to the hospital. Jimmy's little sister Bridget opens the door and Bill is immediately smitten.
Blow it out your ass, you blue socket!
Well, she seems nice. Meanwhile, Sue is at a plasterwork conference with Vivian, where the salad tosser will be unveiled. Unfortunately for Sue, however, Henrietta takes full credit for the invention, even stealing her heartfelt origin story. Back at the airport, the gang has successfully, let me check my notes here, drugged their boss and shoved him into a duffel bag. Everything is going smoothly, until the plane is hijacked by a terrorist group. Sue sees Frank being held at gunpoint on TV and rushes to the scene with Kevin, Maureen, and Bill. Frank admits that he regrets how he's treated his family over the past few months before getting shot in the arm. Scoop wakes up and stumbles out of the plane and single-handedly takes on the hijackers. Shortly thereafter, he accidentally steps on a suitcase bomb and explodes himself and his uncle in the process. Damn, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Frank reunites with his traumatized family and Sue forgives him. In the meantime, Frank sells their expensive TV to get Sue her locket back. Frank and Sue have again, hopefully not with one of those altered condoms. Starting off season 3, summer has just begun and the Murphys are reminiscing about times gone by. They've got a great season planned, full of fireworks, softball games, barbecues, and cold beer. And Frank is still Frank.
Look how young we were. Oh, Frank, you were so handsome.
Sue is pregnant again with a 4th child. You know what they say, if your marriage is having problems, a baby will fix them. Probably. The family notices that Sue never finished wallpapering a room. She starts crying as she's reminded of all the things she's never finished, not to mention the salad tosser which Sue's boss stole credit for. The fam heads off to the Memorial Day parade, where Sue is passing out flyers for her new invention. Maureen is offered a last-minute spot on the computer club float, but she's relegated to space secretary for being a girl, so she destroys the float in anger. Sue gets a $100 ticket for littering because no one wants her flyers. Sheesh, maybe these really were the good old days. Frank gets into a fight with a bratty kid named Jeffrey, prompting his police officer father to intervene. Officer Dahmer. Oh, have we found the actual Jeffrey Dahmer? Officer Dahmer is initially going to arrest Frank, but seeing the sad state of his family affairs, course, he decides to let them go, for now. Later that night, Sue attempts to finish putting up the wallpaper, but gives up out of frustration. Frank sees her crying, but doesn't say a word. Frank is getting tired of Sue's hormonal complaining and doesn't really want to spend time alone with her. She suggests going to the movies on a date night, so Frank invites the kids and the new neighbors, Chet and Nguyen Nguyen. Frank and Chet hit it off and ditch their wives to get some snacks. The two men bond over their time at war and their propensity for yelling at people. Chet offers to help Frank build a room for the new baby.
God knows I did enough over there to fill him up.
My God, Chet, thanks.
Gee, how romantic for him and his Vietnamese wife. With her husbands away, Sue and Nguyen Nguyen have time to get to know each other. Sue unloads her stressors and Nguyen Nguyen shares her experiences in her war-torn village, and it's hella depressing. Speaking of depressing, Kevin is hanging out with his band buddies when they tell him that they think his music is too sad and weird. They'd rather play happier music that can help them pick up girls.
That kind of music, we'd be drowning in.
You! Drowning is a serious subject!
So is drowning in sorrow, Kevin. His friends finally have enough and kick him out of the band. Sue has an idea for a new invention, the forkantula, a single tool that contains every kitchen utensil. She invites some friends over to try it out, but the prototype is a little dangerous.
All your kitchen implements in one.
Oh, dear Lord.
Kevin starts summer school and gets ridiculed not just by his classmates, but by his strict teacher, Mr. Durkin. As Kevin is daydreaming about being famous and British, Mr. Durkin swipes his notebook and reads it to the class, humiliating him. Fed up with the ridicule, Kevin comes up with a great nickname for his teacher, earning the respect of his peers.
Durkin has no money. Durkin has no money.
Because Frank is an adult, he doesn't have summers off, so he heads over to the airline. Brandy Dunbarton has taken over, and Frank is promoted to Chief of Ground Services. Except he also has to do his old job, and he won't get a pay raise. Rosie expected to get a promotion but was snubbed, so he walks off the job. At the bar, the two friends commiserate, but both Rosie knows he has to take the crap from the higher-ups in order to support his wife and kids. Bill and Philip head to the pool, where Bill quickly ditches his friends to talk to Bridget Fitzsimmons.
I'm staying! Goes east side blasters!
She's wonderful.
In Bill's defense, Bridget is a breath of fresh air compared to Philip. Bill gets it right as it starts to thunderstorm. The pool is evacuated, but Bill obviously doesn't want to get out. Eventually, he's pulled out of the pool, but his swim trunks fall off, leaving his shorts behind and giving everyone a show. He's humiliated, but luckily, Bridget thinks that Bill did it on purpose. They walk off holding hands. Ah, young love. It's Kevin's 15th birthday, but Frank is more focused on building the new room for the baby. Frank, Chet, Vic, and the rest of the neighbors come over to get construction started. The lumber that Frank bought is warped, so he and Chet leave to get more. They continue to bond over being men. At the Air Force Base, they get some better lumber, and by that I mean they steal it. Before they go back to work, Chet and Frank take a joyride in his fighter jet, which he has named the Orphan Maker. Chet suggests hooking Frank up with the roommate of a woman he's having an affair with. Frank kills the vibe when he says he would never do that to Sue. Nevertheless, Chet offers to give Frank flight lessons. The wives are inside making sandwiches when Sue realizes they all actually hate the forkantula. Turns out it's a very dangerous device. Not willing to scrap her invention entirely, Sue vows to improve upon it. Bill, meanwhile, is madly in love with Bridget Fitzsimmons, straining his relationship with Philip. They quickly get over it, though. The episode opens with Rosie deciding to run for alderman. Good for you, Rosie. Be the change you want to see in the world. Sue is having a meeting with her friends to get feedback on her new and improved forkantula. They all hate it.
I wouldn't use it to clean out the cobwebs and hug the goats!
Outside, Frank is hanging out with Chet and getting frustrated by the rest of the neighbors showing up and interrupting his bro time. The kids are watching a male versus female game of Jai-Alai, and the adults soon join in. The woman wins, eliciting cheers from Sue and her friends. The spouses exchange some gentle ribbing and Nguyen Nguyen jokes that Chet will make her dinner next.
Well, I guess I do, Frank. Time to cut up the credit cards!
Hey, something tells me that Chet doesn't want an American wife, Frank. Later that evening, Sue walks the next door to return Nguyen Nguyen's platter and overhears Chet screaming at her, revoking her privileges and assigning more chores. Sue decides to hightail it out of there. It's the 4th of July, and the neighborhood is hosting their annual block party. Sue tries to tell Frank that Chet isn't as good of a guy as he seems. Frank blows her off, not wanting to kill the vibe of the upcoming party.
I'll keep my opinions to myself.
There you go!
Famous last words, Frank. Famous last words. Maureen wants someone to hang out with at the cookout, but her brothers ditch her to hang out with their own friends. Kevin is with his delinquent summer school buddies when they go to Claire's house and he finds out that his old band replaced him with a new guitarist, Ben. Even worse, he's really good. Bill, on the other hand, runs off with Bridget, who keeps getting him into increasingly dangerous trouble. She picks a fight with some older kids, ending with Bill getting the living crap kicked out of him. Then she dumps his ass.
You started it! I was a lady defending my good name, you jizz jacuzzi!
I'll be honest, Bill, dating doesn't get much easier. Frank makes his famous Patriot Punch, which just seems like a bunch of hard liquor mixed together. Perfect for our summer block party. Sue tries to get Nguyen Nguyen to open up to no avail, but tensions are rising. The adults start the softball game and decide to divide into men versus women.
You're gonna lose, I'm on both teams. Ah!
Yes, you are. Sue is up to bat and knocks it out of the park with a home run. Because she's so pregnant, she asks Nguyen to run in her place. Chet is furious. He aggressively throws the ball at Ginny and gives her a black eye. Sue chews out Chet, who makes some misogynistic insults, and Frank chews them both out for ruining his day. It's finally time for the Murphy family vacation. They pack up the car, but Sue is still angry about the softball game. Chet apologizes, but Sue doesn't seem convinced. Nevertheless, Chet agrees to build a baby room while they're away. When the family gets to Lake Wawayanda, Frank points out the motel where Kevin nearly drowned as a toddler. Fun anecdote, Dad. The Murphys arrive at their idyllic cabin and everything is perfect. Sorta. Sue wants to stay at her parents' house instead, but Frank is having none of it. Despite the gross cabin and horrible weather, he's determined to make this a nice vacation for his family. Sue's parents arrive for a visit. Frank and Sue's father Stan immediately clash with each other. Stan hands out a bunch of money to the grandkids. Stan continues to antagonize Frank for not being able to provide for his family, leading to a huge blowout argument. Sue's parents leave.
You know what Cadillac stands for? Can't afford.
Good one, Frank. Frank and Sue get into an argument about his bad attitude over the summer towards everyone besides Chet. Sue gets a cramp from indigestion, causing Frank to panic, thinking she's in labor. Seeing that Frank was about to try to deliver a baby with, tongues and a saucepan, Sue laughs and the two make up. Back at home, Chet finished the baby room. He left a note on the wall saying, "Think of me whenever you think of this room." Aww. We then pan to Chet, who's reporting Frank to the city for building without a permit. He tells them his name is Jimmy Fitzsimmons. This next episode starts out with one of the happiest times we ever see Frank.
Mr. Murphy? No, but I'm his wife. I'm just kidding, young fella.
The good mood is short-lived as Frank sees the darker side of Chet, who ratted him out to the city. Now, they have to tear down the new baby's room or risk massive fines. Bill goes over to Bridget's house to return some of her things. Jimmy knocks him out and warns him to stay away from his sister, but in a nice way, kinda.
Why do you hate me?
I'm protecting you. Bridget is possessed.
Bridget tracks them down, scaring away her older brother. She insists that she did not break up with Bill, shifting the blame to him and swearing revenge. She harasses him for days on end before he blows up at her. She cries and they get back together. How, romantic? Frank is pulled away to a work event where the airline is unveiling a 747, flown by none other than Chet. Chet flirts with Brandy at the event, making Nguyen and Sue really uncomfortable. The two women have a heart-to-heart. Nguyen says she's making small changes to Chet each and every day. Sue tells her friend that she doesn't have to put up with her husband's abuse.
For exactly who you are. An angry, sad man who has to bully his wife around to make him feel big and strong.
Yeah, you got him good, Sue. But you know who will have to put up with Chet's abuse? Frank, because now they're going to be working together. Brandy hired Chet to run the pilot training program. Later that night, Chet leaves some vulgar messages on the answering machine. He storms outside with a crowbar, but the cops are already there, arresting Nguyen. Turns out she was poisoning him. Oh, and then Kevin gets arrested for trying to buy a beer. Frank and Sue bail Kevin out of jail. Nguyen actually seems pretty happy with her situation, which is nice, I guess.
His mother told me to talk to a priest, but I poisoned my husband instead. She nice lady.
Sue thinks that Kevin needs more gentle parenting. Frank is resistant, but agrees to change his approach after she starts crying. He's just gotta figure out what Chet's deal is first. Bill tries to open up to his dad about what happened with Bridget, but Frank has more pressing concerns, namely what Chet's deal is. Frustrated, Bill heads to Bridget's house. Turns out Bridget isn't supposed to be dating at all, and the two agree to run away to Pittsburgh together.
We can live under one of their many bridges and sneak into Steeler game.
Romantic. Frank visits Chet in the hospital to tell him off, but changes his mind when he sees that Chet is dying. Chet tells him a story about his abusive father who killed his pet dog, and his abusive mother who blamed him for the outcome. Through tears, Chet says the dog was the last thing he ever cared about and warns Frank to not mess up like he did. He asks Frank to hold his hand, but unable to help himself, Chet uses his dying breaths to insult his former friend. Frank heads down to Kevin's basement to try a new approach to parenting. He tells Kevin that he wants to hear him out and invites him upstairs for lunch.
Dad, you're not gonna kill me, are you?
No good deed goes unpunished, Frank. They have a good talk until Kevin falls asleep in the middle of his dad's anecdote about his damaged childhood, leading to a huge argument. Meanwhile, Sue, Maureen, and Philip are off to attend the Hobo JoJo show, which the kids have been preparing for all summer. Maureen is chosen to compete in the ring toss and almost wins, but Hobo JoJo kicks the box to the side, sabotaging her. Philip beats up Hobo JoJo in a rage. To make matters worse, Frank misses Maureen's big TV debut. Frank goes upstairs to tell off Bill for something unrelated, but all that's left is a note saying that he's run away to Pittsburgh. At the train station, Bill looks like he might be having cold feet. He asks Bridget some pointed questions like where will we sleep and what will he eat, pushing her into a rage. At the last second, Bridget chickens out, leaving Bill on the train to Pittsburgh alone. Frank makes amends with the neighborhood, who agree to help the family look for Bill. Philip and his little brother Anthony tell the family that Bill ran off with Bridget. Sue and Frank didn't even know he was dating. The Murphys go to the Fitzsimmons house to find Bill, but he isn't there. His train was derailed by a car that Kevin's buddies put on the train tracks, so fortunately he won't end up in Pittsburgh. Instead, he's just lost in an unfamiliar neighborhood. He recognizes the bar that Rosie frequents and goes inside to ask for help, but none of them want to take the blame for a missing white kid. Vic finds Bill in his helicopter, but he's coked out and crashes it into a light pole, knocking Bill into the river.
Hey, Bill, your dad sent us. Glad we could help.
Very helpful. Thank you so much, Vic. Frank, also having just crashed into a light pole, gets stopped by Smokey, who offers to drive the family around to find Bill. Frank and Sue apologize to the kids. After multiple attempts, Bill is saved by Maureen, who has mastered the ring toss. To top off the season, Frank gets a postcard from his dad, who says he's coming into town and needs a place to stay. Oh boy. It's the start of a new season. Yes, season 4, but also the start of fall. Frank is trying a new approach, confession with Father Pat.
Bless me, Father, for I've sinned. I just told the nun to go herself.
Baby steps, my guy. Frank's father, Big Bill, is back in town after being estranged from his son for years. Big Bill was a real hotshot in town growing up, making it hard to be his kid. In public, Frank's father was jovial and fun, but at home, he had a temper. Frank is more consistent and just has a temper everywhere. Anyway, Big Bill invested a ton of money in iron lungs and crutches, only to almost lose his business when the polio vaccine was invented. He started drinking more heavily and took it out on his family, leaving his wife soon after. 18 years later, he waltzes back into Frank's life. Big Bill is charming and fun, quickly winning over the rest of the family and the entire neighborhood. To make matters worse, the actor that plays Colt Luger on TV is in jail, meaning the show will be off the air for a while. The Murphys go out to dinner and Bill spills his drink, prompting a public freakout from Frank.
If he just once admit to me what a prick he was, just once, I could find some peace.
Don't hold your breath, Frank. Predictably, Father Pat tells Frank to forgive his father. In response, Frank cusses him out. It's back to school night, and Frank and Sue are going to meet the kids as teachers. Sue wants to get Kevin to apply himself and try to get him into a college prep program. As the mother talks to the principal, Kevin does a ton of mushrooms with his bandmates. He trips a little too hard and hallucinates his mom being disappointed in him and populist politician Huey Long chewing him out. Kevin vomits and vows to do better. His night is improved significantly when a cute girl named Alice talks to him about his Shire of Frodo stickers. Sue's night gets worse when she is unable to get Kevin into the college prep program.
Otherwise, his whole life will pass in the blink of an eye, and he won't have done anything except pack lunches and make babies.
We're not talking about your son anymore, are we?
Might be projecting a little bit, Sue. Bill signs up for hockey tryouts, and Maureen signs up for the school play. Frank is reminded of his time in the school play when his father showed up and made fun of him to the entire crowd.
Holy Christ, he's a carrot. I'm so glad I gave up a half-day's profit for this.
It's not Shakespeare, but come on, Big Bill. Not wanting his daughter to go through something similar, Frank tries to discourage her from joining. Frank is troubled by his past and is distracted for the rest of the evening.
We learn our ABCs, but also our P's and Q's.
You don't know what the you're talking about, lady!
Very fair response, Bill. Frank chews out the kindergarten teacher in front of a bunch of kids and gets into yet another fight with his children. To try to make up for it, he signs up to be an assistant coach. Frank has double booked himself with his kids, promising Bill he'd be at hockey practice and Maureen he'd help with play tryouts. He's still mad at Big Bill for being a good grandparent, lashing out at all of his kids as he attempts to be nice.
Stop reading!
Hey, this insult wasn't to Frank's face. Things are looking up. Bob Pogo returns to work at the airport after major surgery. He has lost a ton of weight and looks, let's say, skinny, as in a lot of skin, which he named Gordon. Yeesh. Frank predictably gets caught up at work, leaving Bill to walk to hockey practice in the rain. He also misses Maureen's play tryouts.
I have to go back to practice.
Hey, hang on.
Big Bill was at practice the whole time and his grandson asks him for a ride home. In happier news, Kevin's grades are improving as he tries to impress Alice. Later at band practice, he demos a song about his new optimistic outlook on life. The band loves it and so does newly 30-year-old Vic. Sue gets depressed as she unpacks baby clothes and dreams of a life gone by. At least Kevin had a good day. Sue is super pregnant and her parents are in town. This means that not only does Frank have to deal with his dad, but he has to deal with Sue's dad. Big Bill decides to take Bill to a hockey game, which annoys Frank. On their way, Big Bill wants to stop at his old store, which happens to be where Bill stole the hockey stick. Suddenly, he's got the whole gang back together and he's drinking beer and smoking cigars with his old buddies, leaving his grandson bored and disappointed. Bill asks if they can leave, prompting an outburst.
Pick him up before I put you down that well.
Jesus, Bill.
Don't worry, Big Bill. You're doing a great job being embarrassing all by yourself. He tries to make up for it with fancy new hockey skates, but it's too late. In the meantime, it looks like Frank and Sue's dad Stan are stuck with each other. To try to diffuse the tension, Frank invites the neighbors over for a few beers, but it doesn't prevent any arguing. The gathering turns into a who had the worst dad contest. Let's just say Stan wins. Sue heads to a work meeting with Vivian, which she's actually been really looking forward to. Bad news, girlfriend, because the work thing was a ruse. It's Sue's surprise baby shower.
Look how surprised she is.
Yeah, Jenny, I don't know if you're all that good at reading other people's emotions. Even Sue's old college friend Gert shows up, and today, she's a high-powered lawyer. The ladies play a game called the B word, where the person who says baby the most during the shower wins a prize. At the end of the party, they tally up the scores and Sue hasn't said baby once. This leads to her confessing that she never wanted the baby. But hey, she got a point for finally saying baby. After a hard day, Big Bill goes back to his son's house. They have a very short bonding moment before Frank's called back into the airport, but Big Bill decides to tag along. Maybe things are looking up. Well, that's until Sue crashes the new car into a tree. In the hospital, Sue and her baby are just fine. Her gynecologist is not fine and drops dead in front of her, but she's good to go as soon as her husband signs her out. It was the 70s. You'd be amazed at the things they didn't let women do back then. Unfortunately for Sue, they can't get a hold of Frank, so they put her in a waiting room for unclaimed women. Well, that doesn't look depressing at all. Bill, feeling disillusioned with both his grandfather and his dad, turns to hockey to get some of his anger out. Mr. Fitzsimmons is still impressed by this mean streak, and Bill gets good at playing dirty.
Thanks, coach.
Most of the time, that's all a kid wants to hear. While she's waiting for Frank to call her back, she realizes she has other options when it comes to delivering her child. She picks up a pamphlet from the trash can that focuses on natural birth and is inspired. Suddenly, she realizes that she has free will and decides to leave the hospital without permission, but ends up being handcuffed to a police officer. Frank and Big Bill are at the airport where they have to deal with an x-ray crisis. They're getting along at first, but the mood turns sour when Big Bill tells a joke to the crowd at Frank's expense. While drinking mini liquor bottles with a security guard, Big Bill has a change of heart. He returns to the crowd to cheer everyone up, passing out free alcohol, which he claims is courtesy of Frank. Meanwhile, Maureen finds a new rebellious friend in Bridget Fitzsimmons, and Kevin meets up with Alice to play her his new song. She's flattered and they kiss. Cute. Frank is in another one of his moods. Sue takes herself and the kids to the mall, leaving Frank to build a crib and talk about his feelings with his dad.
It started out so positive when Sue almost lost the baby.
Might want to make sure your wife's left the driveway before you say that out loud, Frank. A week earlier, Frank was trying to be a better dad, but not that hard. Bill tries to open up to him, but Frank shuts him down. He gives good advice to Maureen, though. Sue is excited to go to the LeMay's birthing classes, which Frank totally forgot about. He's immediately uncomfortable getting face-to-face with lady parts. Frank gets super freaked out by the childbirth video too, which is pretty understandable, and zones out for an entire day. Rosie wins his election for city alderman and wants to take some time off to focus on his new role. 3 months off. Now Frank's juggling yet another role at the airport, raising his blood pressure even further. But he's still trying to be a good dad, but his advice to Maureen backfires. Later at Bill's hockey game, Frank is appalled by how dirty he plays. Bill smarts off, noting the inconsistency.
Jesus, Dad. First I'm a pussy, then I'm a bully? Make up your mind.
Bill then goes off to hang with his coach where he feels liked. Later that night, Frank has a pleasant talk with Kevin about his new girlfriend until it gets derailed by some not so inclusive statements.
She's not black, if that's what you're worried about. Racist!
During their second birthing class, Frank gets ridiculed for buying a dangerous crib and not reading the provided literature. Feeling inferior, he begins attacking the class instructor, and he and Sue get into a huge fight. But all things considered, Frank and Big Bill are getting along. In fact, they hug. And then Frank hugs everyone else, weirding most of them out. Sue isn't convinced that this is going to last and turns to a trusted friend for advice.
What do I do with a screwed up husband like this?
I might not be the best person to answer that question.
I, for one, think it's nice that they're still friends. This next episode is all about Rosie. He even gets his own intro and theme song. He's taking his 3 months off to focus on his new role as alderman. He gets sworn in at City Hall, has a nice morning with his family, and meets with the mayor, who's already angry at Rosie for saying negative things about him during the campaign. Turns out the mayor is super corrupt. If Rosie wants to get anything done in this town, he might have to bend his morals a little. He storms out of the mayor's office, only to find out that he has to share his office with another alderwoman. The mayor continues to do a bunch of stuff to annoy Rosie, like putting construction workers outside his house in the middle of the night and causing damage throughout his neighborhood. After a long week, Rosie goes to the bar for a beer, and suddenly everyone wants something from him.
Rosie, you think you could name our street after me? It will make it easier to tell people where I live.
That request can probably be fulfilled with a Sharpie. Rosie's friends accuse him of being a sellout. The next morning, he goes to the church to seek advice from the priest. But the priest is also in the pocket of the mayor. Yeesh, politics. Rosie goes on a ride with Smokey to blow off some steam. Smokey chews him out, telling him to do whatever he needs to do to help the neighborhood. They spend all night drafting a counter-proposal for the mayor, who has already decided to work with someone else. But Rosie does get the fire hydrants on his block fixed. Rosie decides to go back to his job at the airport. Sometimes it's better to work with the devil you know. Things seem to be looking up with the Murphy family. Big Bill and Frank are getting along. Maureen gets the lead in the school play. Bill's hockey team is doing well and Kevin's grades are even improving. Sue isn't too convinced, saying that 40 years of resentment can't possibly be fixed by one hug. The Murphys head to Maureen's play. Big Bill and Frank are having a good time, but Sue thinks they're both drinking too much. During intermission, Frank tries to make a lighthearted joke about his bad play experience with Bill, but his dad doesn't remember the incident.
I was always sweet. You were just too sensitive.
Oh, come on, not the "you're too sensitive" line. Frank snaps and totally unloads on him in front of everyone. They continue arguing even as the play continues, distracting the audience and throwing Maureen, and then
I'll give you the first shot, you little sissy.
whoa, Frank. Maureen runs off the stage mortified. Frank gets into a one-sided screaming match with Sue. Sue is nearly silent, which is much scarier. The episode ends with Frank deciding to leave for a 4-day work trip the very next morning. Frank is on the plane to Cleveland with a few of his coworkers. The 4 men have to share a single hotel room. Frank thinks about calling but decides against it since Sue told him not to that morning. This was a really big fight. Frank and the guys attend the work training where they're sat next to their biggest competitor. The groups exchange barbs and Frank gets an earful from a few strangers who tell him it was pretty messed up to leave his super pregnant wife alone at home because, you know, it was. He still doesn't call that night. Sue goes to her birthing class alone, which is sad, but at least she gets a standing ovation for it. After class, the instructor gives her an earful about making men totally obsolete, which is kind of aggressive. Frank calls Sue that night and leaves a message apologizing. Hearing the recording, Sue picks up and they finally have a heart-to-heart, which is quickly derailed. The next morning, Frank finds out that his airline is being sold to a competitor, meaning they all might be out of a job soon. Good thing you rushed to make this work trip, huh, Frank?
I tell you know what? Take your X-ray test yourself, Bob!
Isn't it nice when we agree with Frank when he's screaming? Sue calls the hotel to patch things up with Frank, and then her water breaks. Sue can't get a hold of anyone willing to drive her to the hospital, so she drives herself in her trashed car. Hopefully there's no emergency stops along the way. Spoke too soon. Her car breaks down and she has to take the bus. The bus drops her off about 3 blocks away. On the way, she steals Jeffrey Dahmer's bike, which we all know isn't the best decision. Bob Pogo gets the message from Sue, and after a while they find Frank.
Just had to have a baby today. I'll tell you that woman will do anything to win an argument.
Aw, but that's one of the reasons you love her, Frank. They get on the first plane back to Rustvale. It kinda almost crashes out of the sky, but everyone's fine. Big Bill shows up to his son's house drunk, but no one is home. Because he's so drunk, he can't read the note Sue left. Bill and Maureen show up and have their very drunk grandfather drive them to the hospital. Frank arrives as well. Bill and Maureen stand up to Big Bill for being mean to their dad.
But you really messed him up.
Just wait till you have kids, Maureen. Nevertheless, Big Bill takes the criticism to heart. He goes to the chapel to reflect and apologize to Frank. Mid-apology, Frank has to rush to find Sue, and he makes it just in time to meet the baby. Frank heads back to the chapel to talk to his father, but it's too late. Season 4 ends with a very sad cliffhanger. Season 5 opens up with Big Bill and Frank laughing on a fishing trip, but it's just Frank's imagination. Back in the real world, the hospital is able to resuscitate Frank's father just long enough for him to utter his last words, Box 16. Frank puts on a strong and happy-ish face before the funeral. Even Big Bill looks happy-ish to be dead.
Smiling.
Maybe when you die, you'll smile too, Daddy.
It's a lovely funeral. Maureen has a fun time in the morgue, and Bill thinks that church is a scam. After bottling up his feelings all day, Frank isn't ready to deliver the eulogy. He talks to our favorite morbidly obese prostitute who tells him about the 5 stages of grief. Frank yells at the sky for a little bit, which helps. A few days later, the Murphys go bowling for Maureen's birthday. Frank is holding himself together pretty well until he sees the custom bowling balls he forgot he ordered for himself and his father. He goes to the photo booth to cry it out. Mohican Airlines is merging with a competitor, meaning they're eliminating jobs. Most of Frank's coworkers are offered a generous buyout, but Frank is offered less than $50 for over 20 years of service. Because he was fired on Christmas, Frank has technically only been working there for a bit over 6 months. Bosses love a technicality. Sue's feeling emotional about her own family as she supports Frank through his grief. She thinks back to the day of her wedding, when she blurted out that her brother Louis was gay after Stan found out she was pregnant.
I can't imagine a bigger disappointment in my life.
Be careful what you wish for, Stan. Sue wants to patch things up between her loved ones and invites them to Thanksgiving. Frank shows up to work for his unpaid training. His new boss gives him crap for his tardiness. Without much of a choice, Frank decides to try his hardest. He gets some cufflinks and is feeling okay about things until Goomer finds box 16. Determined to understand his father's last words, he freaks out and shuffles through it. It's full of takeout menus. He calls his mom, who gives him good advice.
I'll tell you something. Stop digging up the past.
You're happy.
Meanwhile, Bill and his buddies have gotten themselves into more legal trouble and are sent to a scared straight program. Bill thinks that the police's methods of torture, deterrence, are cruel, but Philip has no such qualms. But when Bill gets ridiculed by a teenager, he sicks the actual cops on him and gets drunk on power. Sue decides to stop by every gay bar in town in an attempt to find her brother. She finds Louis and accidentally ruins his chances. The siblings have a heartfelt discussion and Sue invites him over to Thanksgiving. Louis agrees until he hears his father is coming, but Sue persuades him by telling him that Stan has terminal cancer. Sue prepares for Thanksgiving dinner and dreams of having herself as a wife. Bill and Maureen ruin the cranberry sauce, so she sends Frank to the store with all 4 kids to give her some space. The kids question their mom's fake brain tumor plan, annoying Frank.
People do weird things when they love someone.
Doesn't that line just sum up this whole show? Sue's parents arrive. Stan is immediately rude about Louis, who has not even arrived yet. When he does show up, Louis is incredibly kind. After all, he does think the guy is dying of terminal brain cancer. The rest of the family makes it back from the store. Now Stan and Louis give Frank a hard time. So fun. Things are going well, but Louis keeps threatening to blow the whole operation by being earnest with his emotions.
Oh, Dad. These are the kind of things I'm going to miss when you...
Dad!
Yuck. Way to play ref, Sue. Frank plays along. See, sometimes they make a great team. The night goes off without a hitch until the last second when Sue suggests doing it again the following year. Louis obviously thinks this is insensitive, which obviously confuses their dad, and the gig is up. Stan and Louis get into a shouting match, but Frank wins. Later that night, Frank finds a key from his dad's keyring, box 16. Merry Christmas, which is what we start saying when it's Black Friday in America. The Murphys go to the mall to see Santa and go shopping. Frank ditches Sue to scour the mall for box 16, to no avail. Not at the bank, the pool, the post office, or the bus station. Frank runs into Smokey, who tries to dissuade him from obsessing over box 16. Sue runs into Vic, who, by the way, had a baby with Cutie Pie at the end of last season. He's struggling as a single dad and looks almost as bad as he did when he started getting sober. Vic invites her over to his house with his other young parent friends. Sue teaches them some parenting basics. Vic pays her generously for her help. Bill, Jimmy, and Philip are still finding a lot of perks to being junior cops. The adult cops let the kids take stuff from the evidence cage. They swipe some fun hats and a bootleg cartoon, deciding to open up their own movie theater and charge the kids in town money to watch. Ah, it's good to be king. They break into Chet and Nguyen's old house to host. Except, oops, they accidentally grabbed an adult video, not a nice donkey cartoon.
Bill! What the is this?
Between a fire at a mosque, breaking into a cemetery, and showing all the neighborhood kids something they really shouldn't have, Sue and Frank are convinced that their kids are total screw-ups, meaning they all need a day to get straightened out. Maureen and Sue go to church to talk to Father Pat. Maureen immediately questions the church's teachings, not able to parse what's literal and what's metaphorical. They try to break down the Holy Trinity, which is very confusing. But they can all agree that Jesus was born on Christmas, right?
I read that he was actually born in April.
You shut your mouth!
Guess not. Bill and Frank take a long drive outside of town. He's not in trouble anymore, but Frank is panicking over giving his kid the talk, which he just, skipped with Kevin. Before things get too weird, Bill stops him and says he knows what it is. Frank questions what he knows, and Bill admits he saw his parents doing it.
I puked because I was hiding under the bed when you and Mom were... No!
Awkward. They agree to never discuss this again, or tell Sue. They send Kevin off with Smokey. They have a heart-to-heart about Alice, who he's currently fighting with, and almost lighting the mosque on fire probably didn't help. Kevin sings about her for apparently several hours, and Smokey is moved to tears. The family decides to go bowling to get their minds off all of the drama. Frank confesses to Kevin that he isn't great at talking about feelings, but he wants to try so that they don't have a falling out like he did with his father. And to top off a pretty solid day, guess what Frank finds? Locker number 16. He sticks the key in and click, there's a bunch of cassette tapes from Big Bill. Frank goes through the tape recordings, but there's really nothing interesting in them. But Frank can't seem to let go. He heads to work where he finds out that the airline is in trouble yet again. Ed tells the workers that they'll award a Christmas bonus to one lucky employee who can present them with $1 million idea to save the company. No pressure. Luckily, Frank sees stunt driver Buster Thunder Jr. on TV and has an idea to have him jump a Boeing 747 on live TV on Christmas Eve. Sue stops by Lewis's dojo to apologize for lying to him on Thanksgiving. They make up and find out Vic is their mutual friend. He praises Sue for being great with babies and suggests she opens a business. Lewis offers the dojo as space a few days a week. Kevin is a surprisingly good babysitter to his little sister Megan. When Sue opens up her daycare, she has Kangaroo Kevin play them some nice, cheerful songs.
Baby bonbon, what do you make me see?
Very sweet, even if that song is about weed. Alice sees him through the window and falls in puppy love all over again. Bill, taking after his dad, is working on Christmas as a junior cop. While out with the adult cops, they pick on Rosie and humiliate him in front of his daughter. Bill sees the whole thing and starts to have second thoughts about this career, throwing his uniform in the trash. Frank, who believes his father was trying to tell him about the value of a career, heads to the airport, upsetting all of his kids, but Sue is super cool about it. Frank meets a binge-drinking Buster Thunder Jr. and lays out the game plan. The next morning, the whole airline is stoked to see the stunt. Frank sucks up to the new management and buys a bunch of beer.
Did your wife leave you?
Why does everyone always ask me that? I'm trying to get my boss drunk. It's called business.
Yeah, guy, look it up. A still drunk Buster Thunder Jr. threatens to back out of the stunt at the last minute. He calls Frank a pathetic corporate flunky, which is sort of hard to argue with at this point. Luckily for Frank, this Buster guy is kind of nuts and decides to do the stunt at the last second, and he makes it. Then he rips into the crowd and the entire town, kind of killing the vibe. But nothing kills the vibe more than a grumpy Frank, who bitches about his life to his family yet again. On Christmas, Sue chews him out and the kids back her up. Why is there always someone to blame?
But your favorite person to blame is your father.
Frank loses his temper, making the baby cry. He is convinced he blew it again and leaves for the bar. While there, Frank runs into a former friend of Big Bill's. Frank unloads on him, frustrated for having never figured out what Box 16 was. The friend chuckles. It wasn't Box 16, it was Box 16, the jingle for White House spear. Frank feels like a complete moron and berates his father.
How hard is it to not be an asshole to your own kid?
Well, you're here drinking on Christmas, so you tell me.
These words get through to Frank, who visits his father's grave to play him his favorite song on Christmas. This small form of grieving makes Frank feel a little better, and he returns home a kinder man. For today at least. He apologizes to Sue and the kids, and get this, ignores a telephone call. Roll credits. And that is the entire story of F is for Family from start to finish. An angry, offensive show with a lot of heart. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe. Till next time.